Welcome to Layn Turo University. I currently just completed a drop-off, and I dropped off a vehicle to the Turo guest, and I just want to kind of teach you guys a quick Layn Turo University hack. Something you all can actually consider is if you're doing this all by yourself, like I'm doing this, it becomes a lot easier if you have family members, friends, or someone who can, a partner, maybe business partner, a spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, fiance, whoever, who can help you. So that's cool. But if you're trying to do this by yourself, and even if you do have partners, this is just a good strategy to understand. But especially if you're by yourself, you don't want to leave money on the table. When you deliver a vehicle, I typically charge $120 for delivery. So the cool thing is, what I like to do is, if I do accept a delivery, what I'll do typically is, especially since I'm running this business by myself at this time, you can actually consider dropping off the car one day earlier. And the reason why one day earlier, maybe a few hours earlier, but at least one day earlier, is that way, if anything goes wrong on the day of the rental, you're good to go. Doesn't matter if you're running late the next day, if your car breaks down, whatever the case is, the car is at least safe and in another area. Very good to possibly do this, because it's another idea to consider. So what I'm simply saying is this: if you're delivering a car outside your area, doesn't matter how far it is, especially the further, but if it's close, great, but even if it's further, drop the car off one day earlier, park it maybe on the next street over, or close to the address, keep the key with you, and you could go back the next day. So what this does, this allows you to, if you have multiple cars like I do, then this is another great strategy, because what you can essentially do is be able to get to the point where you drop the car off, drive back the next day. Or if you don't have any other cars like I do, or say all your cars are rented out, or you have no other cars, then you can have your friend bring you, you can have your brother, sister bring your fiance, business partner, fiance, spouse, whoever, you can have someone bring you, that's great. But if you don't have that, you can always catch the bus, or you get Uber and Lyft it over, or you can just, like I said, figure out, you have more time basically with the cars already at the, say, person's Airbnb address, or at their home address, or at their resort address, wherever they're at. This gives you the opportunity to have more time the next day to figure out how to get there, so you don't have to spend any money on Lyft and Uber. Sometimes you just have to spend on Lyft and Uber. I get it, especially if you're running this business by yourself, and that could be worth it, because especially if you're charging, say, $120, that could be worth it. But that could be pretty costly the further you go out, and that's also, you have to consider how far you want to go. Do you want to deliver up to 50 miles? After 50 miles, do you only want to deliver up to 10 miles? Very important to figure out what your miles you're comfortable with, because the cost will hit you later on. But the reason I'm giving this strategy, because I highly always recommend people figure out what bus lines, train lines are in your area, if there's an Amtrak, a Metrolink, etc. Because what essentially happens is, if you're actually able to get the car there one day earlier, this gives you enough time to not only leave that day and get a way to figure out to get back home. Now you can use your other car to drive to the location. So say you're like a host, like who has 20 cars or 10 cars or even 2 cars, or you can use a friend's car even, or someone can bring you back the next day. That way you don't have to spend money on an Uber or a Lyft. You can use your additional cars to drive back over and drive back home. You just bring the key. Don't leave the key there. I don't recommend that. But that way you just bring the key. The car's parked there anyway, and that way now you get free parking basically. You don't have to pay for Uber and Lyft. And the cool thing about this is, now you basically just go back home on the bus or transportation, or your friend could maybe follow you out there and take you back home, whatever the case is. The car's dropped off there already. Now all you have to do is take your second or third car, whatever car you have left, drive back out there, drop off the key, you go back home, bam, you're done. I'd rather take care and have more comfortable ride going home than having to deliver the car the same day, how to figure a way to get back home. You should start thinking ahead of time. Think about how you can actually make this a lot easier and more streamlined and more convenient for you. Time is very essential. So if you drop the car off one day earlier, you're basically buying yourself more time for the next day. Very important to start doing this and thinking like this, so that you can actually understand what it's like to actually run your business and do your business, not spend money on unnecessary cost. Sometimes you just have to spend for Uber and Lyft, I get it, or maybe paying a ride or paying a taxi, but I try my best to figure out the most cost-effective way. If I can find an Amtrak, a Metrolink, typically those go really far. So if you're someone who's a host who maybe accepts trips anywhere or after 50 miles, you might want to consider your bus line, train line, or Really, Amtrak and Metrolink go pretty far, actually. Especially Amtrak. Amtrak's a little more nationwide. Metrolink's a little more unique to certain demographics. So you might want to check your train line, see what the trains are like there. There's a lot of trains that cross state lines, so they go further. That might be able to help you and learn how to use and combine your metro buses in your area and train lines that are local and your ones that travel a little bit further. Very important. But most importantly, try to figure out how to actually not spend money on Uber and Lyft every time, because that could really eat up the whole delivery cost, where now you're not making any money on deliveries, which that's fine, but your goal is to try to make as much money as possible. So I'm trying to share as many secrets as possible here at Layn Turo University. So if you take away anything else from this video, do your best to drop off the car at least one day earlier, so that it buys you time the next day to figure out how to get there. If you have no one picking you up, that means you need to figure out, at least you drive the car there. Now, since you drove it there one day earlier, you're not in a time crunch. Now you have that day to figure out how to get back home, which you should have already figured out by the time. It might be a long bus ride, maybe a long train ride, maybe a mix of both. Maybe you have to catch an Amtrak, maybe a local train, maybe a local bus line, who knows? Maybe a friend, someone. You basically have to figure it out, have them bring you back, and they can bring you back the next day, or you figure it out and come back the next day. This stops you from having to figure it out and having to come figure a way out to get back home yourself the next day, or have to wait the next day. Plus, if anything goes wrong, at least the car's already there. This is a great way to also save money in the long run. And most important, also another step and tip to this Layn hack: always, whatever area you drop your car off, because these are different areas, I highly recommend looking at the signs when you get there. Take a picture of where you left the car so you remember where it's at. Figure out where, like, the where you can park and not park. Some areas don't allow you to park, maybe unless you have a permit. Maybe in certain areas they don't allow you to park after a certain time. But make sure you can park overnight. Make sure you can park there. And if not, you might need to consider a local spot to park overnight. That might be worth it. And that's where, like, maybe they might charge $5, $10 to park overnight. But you have to remember, that's cheaper than an Uber and Lyft ride, especially the further you go out. If this is close, this is really designed really for someone who delivers far. I deliver far sometimes, but most of us are pretty local. But sometimes I do go a little bit further. But I have strategies in place where I come back in one piece. I do my best to not spend any money on Uber and Lyft unless I really necessarily have to, and that's fine, because then the approach is, hey, if I spend on Uber and Lyft, that's basically cheaper than paying for an employee that would have had to do this for me anyway. So it's still good, but the goal is I try not to even pay that, so I really make money on the deliveries as well. And so you just have to become more strategic at playing with your time. So that's what I do. So always figure out what area you're parking in by looking at the signs. Make sure you can park there. You don't want to come back your car towed or get tickets on it. Then you just destroyed your profit there. You had to pay a ticket now. So always look at the signs. I highly also recommend downloading an app called Citizen app. Citizen app allows you to look at different neighborhoods, and you can see the crime rate and things that have happened, so you can see how safe the area is if you feel comfortable. Highly recommend that. But that's about it, people. Welcome to Layn Turo University. This is what you come to get here. Recap: if you're gonna actually deliver a car, consider delivering a car one day earlier, so that gives you a time frame that you can actually be able to locate parking for the area. If you have to pay for parking, if you can park down the street or a few streets over. If you need to park a little bit further down and walk over, so you can also find a way to get a lower cost-effective way of getting back home, maybe through a friend, family member, etc. Maybe a mix of all the above. Maybe a bus line, maybe a train line. This gives you a lot of time instead of having to figure it last minute. And this way, you go home that day, the day before, so your car's already there, parked and ready for them. You just bring back the key the next day. But this allows you to go back. If you have a second car, third car, you just drive back simply. The car's already there, right? You took care of the hardest part. You dropped the car off. Now you just took the bus back, or your friend brought you back. Now you can come back in your own car and drop the key off and go back home in the car. Very cost effective. Best way to do it, you just basically got rid of the Uber and Lyft fee. Worst case, if you have to pay for Uber Lyft, great, but try to get a friend, family member, someone to bring you back. Really utilize friends and family. If you can't do that, bring the car one day earlier, so especially the further you park. That way, you can actually effectively get your car parked there. The car's already there, so if anything happens, it's already there. If you're running late, the car's already there. It's usually more understandable, especially if the car's already there. You can let your guests know, hey, the car's already there, I'm just running late. It's cool, but like I said, do your best to bring it one day earlier. Love you guys. Like, subscribe, share, follow my Instagram at Conrad Layn. Feel free to share this video, share this channel. I love you guys. Thank you for the support and love. Let's make some money. Let's have a good year. Love you guys. Like, subscribe, share. Carl Layn out. And leave any questions, comments below. Carl Layn out.